The catastrophe began with something so simple, so mundane, yet so perfectly positioned to ruin Fujiwara's life. There she was, Yuizaki, the most beautiful and popular girl in school, the one every guy admired from afar, falling directly into a gutter right in front of him. "Hey, stop staring at me!" she yelled, her carefully maintained image crashing down along with her body. A super popular beautiful girl from school was right there in front of me, falling into the gutter, Fujiwara observed with a mix of shock and disbelief. "Even if you say that," he muttered weakly. The situation was already spiraling beyond anything he could have predicted. Things take an interesting turn when Yuizaki starts getting comfortable around him. She's touching his chest and seems genuinely happy about the physical contact, even commenting on how good it feels. The protagonist is completely caught off guard by her boldness, especially when she starts playing around with him. He tries to keep his cool, but let's be honest, 10 minutes alone with her, and he's already flustered. This girl knows exactly what she's doing, and our boy is struggling to maintain his composure. The conversation shifts as they discuss logistics about her staying over. Yuizaki asks if it's really okay for her to stay at his place, mentioning it takes an hour by train to get home. The protagonist suggests she could have asked a female friend instead, trying to play it safe and be considerate, but Yuizaki reveals something important here. His place was the first one that came to mind. She wasn't thinking about convenience or other options. She thought of him first, and that admission changes everything. The protagonist tries to understand her reasoning, asking why she'd specifically come to his place instead of finding someone closer or more appropriate. Yuizaki gets a bit defensive about it, clarifying she didn't mean to impose on him or make things awkward. But then she admits the real reason. When she needed help, he was the first person she thought of. That kind of honesty hits different, and you can tell it means something to both of them. Yuizaki insists she needs to wash her underwear herself, getting flustered when he offers to help. The protagonist is trying to be helpful and considerate, but she's clearly embarrassed about the whole situation. She mentions it's not that she dislikes him or anything, which is actually kind of sweet. The tension between wanting to be independent but also accepting his kindness is written all over her face, and it's creating this awkward but endearing dynamic. They're playing a video game together when suddenly an item pops up that swaps players' positions. Fujiwara tells her not to use it, explaining that it steals items from other players randomly. She's leading the game with an NPC in second place and him in third, so using it would be a bad move. But the real kicker is when she realizes what the item actually does. It doesn't just swap positions, it has other effects that could completely mess up their game. The power goes out due to a typhoon, leaving them in complete darkness. It's pitch black now, and neither of them can see anything. The protagonist mentions the typhoon is probably going to keep the power out for a while, and you can feel the atmosphere shift completely. They were in the middle of a game, and now they're just sitting there in the dark, which is somehow more intimate than either of them probably wanted. The protagonist tries to reassure Yuizaki, telling her to relax and sleep in the bed, thinking of it as not turning him into a bad guy. She giggles nervously and agrees, but there's this underlying tension, because they both know this situation is unusual. He mentions that if he were the type to be inconsiderate or pushy, he wouldn't have just shown up at her place to take shelter. It's his way of saying she can trust him, even in this compromising situation. But Yuizaki thanks him anyway, acknowledging his consideration. She admits that if she was that kind of person who asked for things to kill time on a whim, she wouldn't have just shown up at his place to take shelter either. It's a fair point, and it shows that both of them are being thoughtful about this whole thing. They're navigating this unexpected sleepover with surprising maturity, even if the situation itself is pretty awkward. Things get intense when Yuizaki suddenly asks him to take her there. The protagonist is completely shocked, his mind probably racing with what she could possibly mean. She reaches out to him in the darkness, and you can see the nervousness on her face. The way she's looking at him, squeezing his hand, it's clear she's trying to communicate something important, but the words aren't coming out right. The protagonist's heart is racing as he tries to process what just happened. Something felt weird just now, and he's wondering if he did something wrong. You can see the confusion and panic written all over his face as he sits there in the dark, replaying the moment in his mind. His internal monologue is going crazy, trying to figure out what that interaction meant and why it felt so charged. He rushes to check on Yuizaki after that intense moment and ends up accidentally bumping his head on something. She's finally awake now, asking what's going on. The protagonist is flustered, trying to explain himself while nursing his forehead. It's his fault for not waking up sooner. He was careful not to hurt her, so he tells her to chill out. The whole situation is comically awkward after whatever just happened between them. The next morning at school, classmates spot them walking together and immediately start gossiping. Someone wonders if that loner could be Yuzaki's boyfriend, while others confirm they saw them being all lovey-dovey on their way to school. The rumors are already spreading like wildfire. People are convinced Yuizaki has been brainwashed or put under some kind of spell, maybe even hypnosis. The protagonist notices he's being looked at more than usual, and the attention is definitely not the kind he wants. The protagonist is now back to his peaceful school life, or so he thought. Turns out, telling Yuizaki to keep her distance at school actually paid off, because now they're completely ignoring each other. He can finally breathe easy without all the awkward stares and whispers. His classmate Fujiwara greets him, and everything seems normal again. Well, as normal as it can be after spending the night at a girl's place during a typhoon. It's become a whole conversation topic among the teachers too, with everyone talking about how friendly the protagonist is getting with Yuizaki. One teacher points out it's actually pretty rare to see Yuizaki getting along with a guy, since she seems uncomfortable around men in general. Another teacher notes she's sometimes hostile with male teachers too, not just students. The protagonist overhears them suggesting he focus and wrap things up instead of gossiping, but the damage is done. His reputation is definitely taking a hit, and he knows it. The catastrophe began with something so simple, so mundane, yet so perfectly positioned to ruin Fujiwara's life. There she was, Yuizaki, the most beautiful and popular girl in school, the one every guy admired from afar, falling directly into a gutter right in front of him. "Hey, stop staring at me!" she yelled, her carefully maintained image crashing down along with her body. A super popular, beautiful girl from school was right there in front of me. "Falling into the gutter," Fujiwara observed with a mix of shock and disbelief. "Even if you say that," he muttered weakly. "Oh." The situation was already spiraling beyond anything he could have predicted. What came next sealed Fujiwara's fate in the worst possible way. "The way you've stuck your foot in it is just too perfect," he couldn't help but comment, staring at the absurdity of the situation before him. "It's impossible not to look," he added, which only seemed to infuriate her further. "It's not like I did it on purpose!" Yuizaki shouted back, her face flushed with embarrassment and anger. The gap between her usual composed, elegant demeanor and this moment of complete humiliation was staggering. This was definitely not how encounters with school idols were supposed to go in any universe. The complications multiplied as the reality of her situation became painfully clear to both of them. "Huh?" Fujiwara responded, still processing the chaos unfolding before him. "Work? When does it start?" he asked, trying to understand the sudden urgency that had entered her voice. "This really sucks. I have work soon. There's no way I can go smelling like a sewer," she complained desperately, the perfect image completely shattered. The desperation radiating from her was genuine, real, and it would lead to a suggestion that would change everything about Fujiwara's peaceful existence forever. The turning point came with words that would haunt Fujiwara for days to come, echoing in his nightmares. "Okay, yeah, that's not gonna work," he said, recognizing her predicament even as every survival instinct screamed at him to just walk away. "It takes an hour just to get home. No way I'll make it on time," Yuizaki protested when he suggested she simply go home to clean up. "You've still got about an hour and a half. Maybe you could go home first?" He'd offered hopefully, praying she'd take that option. "It starts at 5. Why?" The time constraint was real, but nothing prepared him for what came next. "How about coming to my place then?" The words dropped like a bomb into Fujiwara's consciousness, detonating his entire worldview. "I could let you use the shower at least," Yuizaki added casually, as if this were a perfectly normal suggestion between two people who'd literally never even spoken before today. "Huh?" Fujiwara's brain temporarily short-circuited, completely unable to process the words he'd just heard. The beautiful, untouchable Yuizaki, the girl every guy fantasized about from a safe distance, was inviting herself to his apartment. This couldn't be real. This had to be some elaborate prank. The situation escalated into absolute chaos when morning arrived at school the next day and reality crashed down. "She sits behind me in class, but we've never talked," Fujiwara thought, hyper-aware of her presence now in a way he'd never been before. "She's a rare beauty, making her somewhat of a celebrity at our school." The disconnect between what he knew about her pristine public image and what he'd experienced privately was already creating unbearable cognitive dissonance. Pace. She walked past him deliberately, and he could feel the eyes of everyone in the classroom tracking her movements, completely unaware of the secret they now shared. "Me being an otaku and loner, we're practically from different worlds," Fujiwara reflected desperately, trying to maintain the comfortable mental distance he'd always had from popular students like Yuizaki. I guess the situation was bad enough for her to have no choice. he rationalized, attempting to explain away the bizarre events of the previous day as a one-time emergency. But the way she'd acted at his apartment, the confidence with which she'd invited herself over, the casual familiarity, it all suggested something far more calculated than mere desperation. Something was very, very wrong with this picture. The uncomfortable tension built throughout the day as Yuizaki began what could only be described as a campaign. Grumpy. The expression on her face as she looked at him was nothing like the sweet, demure persona she showed everyone else in the school. Fujiwara noticed the change immediately, felt the intensity of her gaze boring into him. Why are you being all cold, all of a sudden? The thought flashed through his panicked mind as her behavior shifted dramatically. Oh, I get it. You're like, what were you doing bringing a girl home and stuff? She said with a knowing smile that made his blood run cold with dread. The full horror of his situation became apparent as Yuizaki continued her relentless psychological approach, cornering him verbally. You're freaking out about what to do if your parents see this, right? She pressed, reading him with uncomfortable accuracy that suggested she'd done this before. The smile playing on her face was predatory, calculating, completely unlike anything he'd ever seen from the girl everyone worshipped and admired. Like, what were you doing bringing a girl home and stuff? She continued, her tone making it crystal clear she knew exactly what kind of impossible position this put him in socially. This wasn't the innocent, pure maiden everyone believed her to be. Taking a shower? At Fujiwara's house? The rumors exploded through the school like wildfire, transforming Fujiwara's carefully maintained anonymous existence into a social nightmare beyond his worst fears. Wait, Yuizaki-san, students exclaimed with shock, disbelief, and barely concealed envy. This is bad, bad, bad. Fujiwara's internal monologue screamed as he realized the devastating magnitude of what was happening to his reputation. Drip, drip. The sound effects captured the sinking feeling in his stomach perfectly. This is extremely bad! The association with Yuizaki was bringing exactly the kind of attention he'd spent his entire high school life carefully avoiding. The nightmare continued, escalating exponentially as Fujiwara found himself trapped at the center of unwanted attention throughout every agonizing moment of the school day. I'm standing out in the worst way possible, he thought desperately, feeling the eyes of countless students tracking his every movement like predators watching prey. I just want to live a normal life. Is this some kind of nightmare? Wake me up already. His internal voice cracked with genuine distress and desperation. Why is this happening to me? The question echoed endlessly in his mind. Ah, that's the guy everyone's been talking about. The whispers followed him everywhere, destroying any hope of returning to his peaceful, unnoticed existence. Yuizaki's carefully constructed public narrative only made things exponentially worse for Fujiwara as she explained the situation to her curious, gossip-hungry classmates. Like, the reason I ended up at Fujiwara's place was because I accidentally stepped in a nasty gutter, she said with perfect innocence that would make angels weep. I was freaking out about what to do since I had work. The explanation sounded so reasonable, so pure, so completely believable. No way, really? That's crazy! Her audience ate it up completely, swallowing every word. How about coming to my place then? That's what he said, she added smoothly, completely reversing who had suggested what. The manipulation was absolutely masterful. I just thought he was a kind boy, you know? Yuizaki continued building her narrative with practiced ease that spoke of long experience. It's not about him being my type or anything. The way she deflected while simultaneously keeping the topic alive showed sophisticated social maneuvering far beyond normal high school politics. Kind? The word mocked Fujiwara from across the classroom like a curse. This is so cute, Kia! She's like a real-life maiden! Classmates gushed nearby, buying into every single word without question. Yeah, that's right. I'm not that good with guys, she added with perfectly calibrated shyness. Ah! What are you doing, Fujiwara? Nothing. I'm not doing anything, he insisted desperately when caught staring. The internal conflict raged like a war as Fujiwara tried desperately to reconcile what he knew with what he wanted to believe about reality. Yuizaki might not actually be such a bad girl after all, he attempted to convince himself, while watching her interact normally during afternoon classes. But no, we're just not the types to get involved with each other. The mental boundaries he'd maintained for years felt increasingly fragile, ready to shatter. What should I do? The question repeated endlessly like a broken record. Poke, poke. She kept glancing in his direction, poking at the edges of his awareness deliberately. And right as the afternoon classes start, this again? The subtle harassment never stopped. By the end of that exhausting day, Fujiwara had decided on a course of action, one that would prove catastrophically ineffective in ways he couldn't imagine. With this, now everything's truly back to normal, he told himself while walking through the school hallway after classes finally ended. I'm just gonna pretend I didn't see anything! His internal declaration was desperate and loud enough to echo in his skull. Alright, but it seems like thinking about it won't give me any answers. He stood outside the classroom, note carefully prepared in hand. What was with Yuizaki's expression at that moment? I just want to say, all's well that ends well, or something like that. The denial was strong, but reality was about to crash through it. The confrontation came when Fujiwara tried to establish clear boundaries through what he thought was a simple, straightforward note. Waiting? For what? Yuizaki asked, with that same unsettling confidence that made his skin crawl. I've been waiting, you know? The implication in her voice made every hair on his body stand on end. Well, why are you making that face? Her expression was calm, knowing, predatory. Nothing like the innocent maiden everyone else saw when they looked at her. She held his note casually between two fingers. Did she just say something? He wondered in confusion. Mumble, I put a note in. The paper that was supposed to create distance had instead drawn her closer, like blood in water attracting a shark to its prey. The protagonist is carefully crafting a message to Fujiwara, and it's taking way more mental energy than it should. Just sending one text has him exhausted and needing a break. When his phone beeps with Fujiwara's reply, he thinks to himself that this should be good. The anticipation of her response has him on edge, wondering what she'll say back to him. It's Sunday, and the protagonist is heading out to meet up with someone. He's taking the train, rushing through the busy platform as his train arrives. Once he's on board, he spots Yuizaki sitting there on the train. His heart rate picks up immediately, and he calls out her name, clearly surprised to run into her like this. The protagonist admits it was hard to bring up, but he knew he should have given Yuizaki a heads up that his little sister was tagging along today. A small girl appears beside them, and Yuizaki asks if this is her. He confirms that yes, this is Miki, his little sister. The protagonist introduces them, saying he's Sandai Fujiwara, and it's nice to meet her. Miki bows politely and introduces herself back. Fujiwara gives the protagonist a knowing look and warns him not to be fooled by Miki's innocent act. She's good at playing innocent, but once she warms up to you, she turns into a total mischief maker. The protagonist shoots back with a defensive, just so you know expression, clearly already aware of his sister's true nature. Yuizaki seems a bit thrown off by this warning. The protagonist asks Miki if she's still mad about yesterday. Yuizaki interjects, asking what he means by that. The girl explains she doesn't know what happened between them, but she wants to help smooth things over. The protagonist admits he was hoping to use this outing as a chance to make things right with Yuizaki after whatever went down. Yuizaki notices that Miki has wandered off somewhere, asking where the little girl disappeared to. She's startled when she realizes Miki isn't where she was just a moment ago. The protagonist points out the obvious. They have an oven at home, but more importantly, he asks if Yuizaki even knows how to cook. She admits she can't, so that's probably not going to help the situation. Yuizaki suddenly panics, seriously asking where Miki could have gone. She's getting genuinely concerned about the little girl's whereabouts. The protagonist tries to calm her down, saying Miki's gotta be around here somewhere, and he'll go look in his room for her. Yuizaki says she'll check the bathroom to cover more ground and find her faster. Miki is discovered standing there, and she makes a weird observation that she hasn't even eaten any sweets, but she feels like she's already full. It's a strange thing to say, and the protagonist seems confused by it. Then suddenly, realization hits him about something important, though we're not entirely sure what he's figured out just yet. They decide to go shopping together to get ingredients for whatever they're planning. The protagonist suggests they should go ahead with it, and Yuizaki agrees. But then there's complete panic when they realize they forgot to get the ingredients for the sweets they wanted to make. Both of them are freaking out about this oversight. Yuizaki reminds him that this is his chance to strike while the iron's hot. He almost fell in love with her when he patted her head earlier in that specific area on the 4th floor. She's giving him romantic advice, telling him the good news is that she almost just fell for him right then. Momentum is key, and he shouldn't be scared, she encourages. Yuizaki continues her coaching, explaining he should fake an accident and then go for a kiss. She's being pretty bold with her suggestions here. Then she makes sure to remind him to give Miki enough money for the arcade games since they're sending her off to play. The protagonist says he's gonna disappear into the arcade while the two of them have their moment. The protagonist tells Yuizaki not to give him that sass, reminding her she needs to worry about herself, not him. Yuizaki fires back, asking if he's sure he'll be okay by himself. He reassures her to take her time and enjoy herself. He then points out that it's close by and there are heaps of people around, so it's totally safe for him to be alone. Miki excitedly hands over the money she received, clearly thrilled about getting to spend time at the arcade. This whole outing has been carefully planned to give the protagonist and Yuizaki some alone time together, and Miki is happily playing her part by keeping herself entertained with games. Yuizaki teases him about not having to give Miki money, saying she'll just think she can always get her way by throwing a tantrum. The protagonist makes a joke about being a kind papa to his future kids. Yuizaki laughs and says he's totally gonna spoil his kids when he has them. He admits she might be right about that. The protagonist suddenly wobbles and says he's gonna fall. In a moment of panic, Yuizaki reaches out to catch him as he stumbles down. Her reflexes kick in and she manages to grab onto him before he hits the ground completely. The physical contact between them is sudden and unexpected, catching both of them off guard. After the near-fall incident, Miki checks on him asking if he didn't smack his head. She wants to make sure he's okay after that big tumble. Yuizaki is visibly concerned as well, her face showing genuine worry. The protagonist seems a bit dazed but tries to play it cool, though the moment has clearly affected him emotionally. Yuizaki suddenly looks directly at him and confesses that she likes him, comparing herself to Sandai. The protagonist is completely caught off guard by this admission. He asks what she means about him, clearly flustered. Yuizaki clarifies it's hard to explain, but she just thinks he's a really nice guy, and she's drawn to that quality in him. The protagonist tries to deflect, saying he just got caught up in the moment and said what he said. He insists it was his first confession, and it took a lot of courage to say it. Yuizaki tells him not to be like that, acknowledging that he just got caught up and blurted it out. She understands it was spontaneous and not necessarily planned. Back at home later that evening, the protagonist is checking his phone and notices a new message notification. He wonders what time it is and who's texting him. When he opens it, he sees it's from someone named Shino, which surprises him. The message says she'll stop texting him until he's ready to answer, and that she doesn't want to pressure him. The protagonist sighs and thinks to himself that this gives him some time to think everything over properly. He's clearly got a lot on his mind after the eventful day. He tells himself he needs to get home safe so he can watch today's anime episode, trying to return to some sense of normalcy after all the emotional chaos of the day.